What's up, everybody? Welcome back once again to the channel. And as you've seen in the last several videos, Myrtle has a new motor. However, so the story on the engine is so this is a story building on a story building on a story. I work at a restoration shop in Redwood, so I work 10 minutes away from my house. Anyway, I pulled a small block 350 out of a 67 Camaro that's getting a new motor just because it's worn out. Motor's been sitting next to my toolbox for probably 2 or 3 months at this point. So I asked Joe, the guy at the front desk who talks to the customers, I'm like, hey, does Mr. Customer want that engine? Because I know it had low oil pressure and it was just generally, for lack of a better, for a broad term, it was worn out. It was tired. I'm like, I know that it's tired. I know it's worn out. I know that it theoretically needs a rebuild, but it runs on 8 cylinders. The car ran and drove into the shop. It runs on 8 cylinders. I have low standards for what it is. This truck's not going to be anything super crazy, especially not right now. I just want it to run on 8 cylinders to where I can drive it to town, to Waterloo. I'm not going to drive it any further than probably a 45-minute one-direction trip, simply because it probably gets 8 miles to the gallon, and it doesn't have air conditioning or sound deadening or radio. Yeah, the list can go on and on and on. Anyway, right now at this moment, it's not an amazing truck to drive. It's fun, but it's not super comfortable to drive on a long trip. So I don't need an engine that's going to be able to drive me to Kentucky and back. Round trip, no stop, no problem. That's not my standards right now. It's not my requirements. So Joe talks to Mr. Customer. Customer doesn't want the engine. Says I can have it for free because he's trying to clean out room in his garage. Perfect. Not what I was expecting. I was willing to give him $200 or something for it, whatever. He doesn't want it, and he gives it to me. I take it home, put an intake on it, swap everything that I need to off of the original engine onto the Camaro engine, drop the Camaro engine in the truck. It's not anything crazy. It might have a small cam in it because it's got some pickup to it. Nothing crazy. It'll bark the tires if you mash it from a dead stop, so it's probably making 200 at the crank for horsepower. It's being generous. It's nothing crazy. I'm not going to win any races with it. But it runs on all 8 cylinders. Now, the oil pressure, low oil pressure is low oil pressure, as in hot idle in gear. The needle on my gauge drops to the peg, which is 0. Obviously, it drops onto the peg. It rests on the peg, so it has 0 oil pressure hot idle. Cold start, it's got 30 pounds. At idle, in gear, it's 25, which is acceptable for a hot idle. That's acceptable for a cold start as well, but the issue is that if that's your cold start oil pressure, it has to go down to the X number hot. And I already have 15W40 Shell Rotella T5 in it, so I can't go much thicker than 80W90 gear oil at this point. That's like my next option, or just run straight Lucas. That would probably work. Will it? I don't know. Anyway, so to bring this all back around into something that is digestible and actually makes sense to people, I have a new oil pump that we're going to put in the truck. And no, we're not pulling the engine out because I'm lazy and I don't want to. So instead, I'm going to make it take twice as long as it needs to with double the pain and pull the oil pan off while it's in the truck. While I make it sound terrible, it's probably not actually going to be that bad because that truck was meant to have a 454 in it. So, well, this truck's not supposed to have a 454. You could get them with a big block. So there's plenty of room in the engine bay, and there's plenty of room for under the cradle. There's a good 4 inches of room between the oil pan and the cradle. So I should have plenty of room to pull it out, to pull the pan down. Because getting the pan off is the hard part. After the pan's off, I can pull the pump out no problem, no sweat. It shouldn't actually be that involved of a thing. Now, I am going to most likely pop the main caps and pop the rod caps off and check the bearings, because the last time I started it to move it, it made a weird noise. I might be being paranoid, but while I'm already in there, and while the block does not currently have a window in the side of it, I'm going to check the bearings. If they look okay, I'm going to plastic gauge them. If they plastic gauge okay, I'm going to run them. If they A, don't look good, or B, don't plastic gauge good, I'm going to throw new bearings in it. Because, like I said, I'm already there, and even though that's not the motor I'm going to most likely build, it is the motor that's in the truck that needs to get me probably close to a year to be realistic. In my head, I really want to say a month. But, thanks to COVID, cylinder heads, aluminum cylinder heads, aren't shipping until February approximately. That's about the average. Promax, I can get Promaxes by probably the second week of January. Edelbrock heads, they're looking like March. Intakes the same way. Camshafts are basically a mythological being that used to exist that some people have seen allegedly, but nobody can actually get their hands on one or touch one physically. Being that this motor ate the camshaft, the motor's on the floor, that's why I'm pointing to it. Being that motor ate the camshaft being the hardest part to find, is a slight wrinkle in the plan. So, realistically, it's probably going to be a year before I can rebuild that motor. And or I decide if I want to put an LS in it or not. I would love to do an LS because then I have easy fuel injection. A 4L80 bolts right up to it. Then I have overdrive. Everything's great and peachy. It's basically a mid-2000s Silverado at that point. But, you know, we'll see what happens. Where the budget goes, where parts availability, engine availability, etc. goes. But right now, let's concentrate on the task at hand because I get distracted, apparently, since I've been talking for close to 8 minutes. Anyway, let's get the oil pump in it. Or at least start taking stuff apart so I can get to the oil pump. And hopefully the bearings look fine. I should probably get some plastic gauge also. That's fine. Have fun. Thanks for doing this thing with me.
Alright everybody, currently you are staring at a Turbo 350 transmission pan. But up there is the inner workingness of a small block Chevy. And yes, I know, that is not right. That is because I pulled that rod cap off to look at the bearing. And that is the bearings that we have. While they are not good by any stretch, they are still silver. So we're going to roll some bearings into that because that's proven to be a reliable thing to do. Oil pump's obviously not there. Oil pump's been removed. That is sitting over there. That there in the oil drain pan. I do have the new oil pump. I did not order bearings because I did not get bearings yet because I knew that if I ordered standard bearings, there'd be 10, 20s, 30s in here. But since I didn't order bearings, it has standards, so that's a thing. But if I would have ordered standards, it would have had 10s, and if I would have ordered 10s, it would have had 30s. And if I would have ordered all of them, it would have had like 25s or something fucking stupid. It wouldn't have had what I ordered. Somebody has been in here, as you notice right there, it's got 4 engraved on that. So somebody's already been in here before, which isn't necessarily a problem. It's a 4-bolt main, which is a bonus. Not that really matters for what I'm doing, but it's a bonus. So yeah, I didn't videotape any of this because, let's face it, there's nothing really interesting about removing 20 some odd freaking bolts. just to see me wrestle the oil pan off the motor. But we did get it. I haven't found any large chunks in the pan yet. There's the pan. It's just, oil pump drive rod, oil pump bolt, pan bolts, that nylon bushing that I'm not exactly sure where it goes, although I haven't. Oh, it probably goes right there. We see that fine small line. Inspection cover, etc. And yes, there is more oil outside of the engine than there is inside the engine, but that's fine. Normal stuff. But all in all, that actually went pretty good. That only took me about an hour to disassemble. So, shouldn't be much different, Throw probably 2 hours at it. When my bearings come in, putting the bearings in, probably 2 hours. 3 hours or so. All in all, this shouldn't be too bad of a thing. If it gets to be too difficult, I'll pull the motor. Realistic worst case. It's not terribly difficult to do. It's not exactly easy, but I did finally get the original engine up on the stand. We'll start tearing into this after I get the truck running good, which isn't exactly pertinent because it's winter, so I'm not going to be driving it a whole lot anyways. But it would be nice to get it running reliably, just, minimize the amount of stuff I got going on. But yeah, so that's going to do it for today's video. Flip y'all around so you can see me. That's going to do it for today's video in this part. Thanks for watching. I hope you considered it interesting or didn't. I really don't know. Hopefully you thought it was interesting, but if you didn't, that's fine too. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you consider subscribing, and have a great day.